NFL player props here on PrizePicks for Thursday, September 14th. Thursday Night Football between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Minnesota Vikings. Before we get started, you guys, check out the link in the description below to sign up for our premium Discord. It's where I post all the plays here I'm making on PrizePicks. We also have other premium cappers in there that post all of their plays and analysis that they make on PrizePicks as well. So go ahead and check out that link in the description below of this video. I do also need to mention I'm not a gambling expert and this is not financial advice. These are simply plays I'm personally looking at making, hopefully give you guys some insight and analysis to make your own player prop decisions. No one is pressing submit on those parlays other than yourselves. But let's get right into it, you guys. This should be a pretty fun, exciting game in my opinion here. We got the Eagles first the Vikings here. Is 49 over under. Philly's going to be 6.5 point favorites here. And just looking at the lines or the over unders for a lot of games this week, this is one of the higher over-unders on the week. We got KC Jacksonville, which is at 51, as you can see here. But I think besides that, it actually is the second highest over-under total on the slate. So hopefully we do get a higher scoring game. I think the most over-unders have been under as far as like the games I've watched so far early, obviously in week 1 of the NFL season. But 6.5 point favorites here for Philly. I got 2 player props that I am targeting from this game. Again, let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it. So the first one I'm targeting is going to be TJ Hockenson, and I like his over 5 receptions. So if you're in the premium Discord, I actually gave TJ Hockenson as soon as these lines came out at 4.5. He stayed at 4.5 probably like for a 6 to 7 hours, maybe after I posted it in the page, Discord. But I still like this at 5, honestly. I think at bare minimum we're getting massive push potential here for TJ Hockenson. But take a look at this. So obviously Minnesota being 6.5 point underdogs on the road, I think helps Hockenson just with Minnesota's pass happy offense that they already have. He's cleared this line in 4 of his last 5 games, you guys. 8, 10, 7, and 13 are his 4 overs here. And we take a look at TJ Hockenson since he joined the Minnesota Vikings. His targets have just been through the roof, right? So just take a quick look at TJ Hawkinson's game log with the Vikings. He's gone over this line now, or at least pushed or gone over this line in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times already this season, or since joining the Vikings. He's at least pushed this line in 8 of 11 games. Now, we take a look at his targets. His target share has been absolutely massive as well, seeing 6+ targets in 10 of 11 games so far since joining the Vikings. So taking a look specifically at this matchup, I think for TJ Hockenson, if we look at NFL defense versus position, the Eagles gave up a total of 8 receptions for 92 yards on 9 targets to tight ends last week of the Patriots. We look at the Patriots tight ends that got some work. We see Hunter Henry caught 6 targets, 5 catches on 6 targets for 56 yards, and Mike Gesicki, another tight end in that 2 tight end kind of rotation that they run, he had 3 catches. So 8 combined catches from the tight ends for the Patriots in this game. And we take a look back at TJ Hockenson over on Outlier. Again, there's a link in the description below. You guys can get a 7-day free trial with Outlier. The odds for this are just crazy. He's minus 192 on FanDuel, you guys, to go over 4.5 receptions. Now, like I said, I gave this in the Discord when it was at 4.5. So again, check out the Discord link. But at minus 195 on FanDuel to go over 4.5. So we're looking at minus 195 for TJ Hockenson to at least push this line. He's at least pushed this line in 7 of his last 10 games. Again, obviously all with the Vikings. Now, taking a look at TJ Hockenson and just as a tight end, over the last 8 weeks of last season, he was the second highest targeted tight end in the National Football League. 9.8 targets per game, 49 total targets through those last 8 weeks of the NFL season, and that was without playing in a playoff game. Right? I don't think the Vikings made the playoffs, or they did, or they played in the wild card. He had 11 catches in that wild card game. 11 catches. Right? So coming to look at this, like I said, Eagles gave up that last season versus the tight end. It was a solid spot as well. The Eagles were tied 25th, or actually, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th most targets to the tight end position, as well as the 8th most total receptions to the tight end position. Now, the Eagles, to me, have some pretty elite cornerbacks in Darius Slay and James Bradbury, who should be, on Justin Jefferson and on Jordan Addison. So it should open up things down the middle for TJ Hockenson as well. And we do know that the Minnesota offensive line isn't great. So, and the Eagles do have the Vikings offensive line isn't great, and the Eagles have a pretty solid defensive line, with linebackers being their more, of their weakness. So I think it presents an opportunity here for TJ Hockenson to be that security blanket for Kirk Cousins, as he has been, and I think he will continue to be. And also 6.5 point underdogs on the road. They're obviously going to be passing. I think Kirk Cousins threw like 45 passes in week 1. Definitely see more of the same here with that. So yeah, I like TJ Hockenson over 5 receptions in this game. I think at bare minimum we're looking at a strong push potential. The second prop is an NFL first half prop, and I for some reason I can't shy away from these first half fantasies from these elite quarterbacks, and I'm going Jalen Hurts over 11.5 fantasy in the first half against Minnesota here at home. So Jalen Hurts, he had an underwhelming game in the first half versus Minnesota, or the Patriots. Obviously, I think the Patriots' game plan was kind of take Jalen Hurts out the game, or just kind of limit him, and they did a good job with that. 7.48 fantasy from Jalen Hurts in the first half in that game against New England, which I don't think he played well. Again, it was on the road. But I like Jalen Hurts here to bounce back at home with, I think, a much weaker defense that the Minnesota Vikings have. We take a look at Jalen Hurts. Now, obviously, talking about Jalen Hurts and his ability to rack up fantasy points, I mean, you just take a look at last season. Jalen Hurts, I mean, this is obviously a full game, but, I mean, he had at least 20 fantasy points in every game except for 3. Had one game with 18.5, had 16 in that conference championship versus the 49ers, which was just a super weird game. Obviously, the Niners had the quarterback issues, and we really saw the Eagles just trying to run the ball to milk the clock. And then he had 12.8 against the Giants, where that was in week 18, where the division was already wrapped up as well. But nonetheless, he's had massive games, right, last season. We know he faced Minnesota just last season, right? Just last season in the same situation, Minnesota at home. He finished with 38.4 fantasy points in that game against Minnesota last season. And in that game, he went 26 for 31, 33 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also ran for 57 yards on 11 attempts and had 2 touchdowns. And he had a fumble, but I guess he didn't lose it. But Jalen Hurts went crazy last year against the Minnesota Vikings at home. He gets that same situation here on Thursday night here. 38.4 fantasy points last year. Over on outlier here as well for Jalen Hurts. I like the odds here for some of these props that obviously correlate to his fantasy score. You like over here over 1.5 pass TDs. He's currently minus 145 and minus 135 on BetMGM, but minus 145 on Caesars to go over 1.5 passing touchdowns. If you also take a look here at his rushing yards, he's at minus 117 on his over 47.5 rushing yards. And even just last season, I mean, the rushing yards are obviously going to attribute to Jalen Hurts being able to hit this fantasy score line. And I think at 6.5 point favorites, I think the first half fantasy score is just a little bit safer. His full game is at 23.5, so it's exactly split even. But I like his first half fantasy score just a little more than the second half. But taking a look at the matchup versus the Vikings, right? The Vikings, dating back to last season, were an elite matchup for quarterbacks. One being that they have a kind of prolific offense and a pass-happy offense, being that the ball moves down the field for the Vikings, which puts the ball in the opposite quarterback's team's hands more often. But the Vikings gave up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position last year. Total fantasy points to the quarterback position, 3rd most as well. And then as well as the pass attempts right here, 5th most pass attempts in the NFL. Rushing yards right here, 7th most rushing yards to the quarterback position. But overall, the 3rd most fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. We just saw Baker Mayfield. I think he had like 17 fantasy points for the full game. Obviously, this is all for the full game. There's not really many platforms that will show you first half props. I'm not really sure why. But we look at quarterbacks last season versus the Minnesota Vikings, and Jalen Hurts had his best game. Jalen Hurts at quarterback had his best game of any quarterback versus the Vikings last year at 34 fantasy points. We can see numerous guys here went over 20. And then we also look at just kind of how it would break down, right? So this is a fantasy calculator. So Jalen Hurts, 125, a passing touchdown, and 25 rushing yards would be exactly 11.5, right? So there's obviously a variety of ways Jalen Hurts can rack up these fantasy points and, get these points higher for us. But I think there's just too many ways for him to hit the over on this, especially if he can get 5 to 6 possessions in that first half. We saw that first game versus the Minnesota Vikings and the Buccaneers. Now, obviously, the Eagles are not the Buccaneers. Shout out to the Buccaneers, though, by the way, for this win. But you can see the possession was pretty split, pretty evenly, 30 to 29 minutes-wise. And then total drives, they had 12 and 11. So if some of that can split out to, the Eagles in this game getting 5 to 6 drives in the first half, that should be more than enough for Jalen Hurts to be able to clear this line. And he just has the weapons. Also, something I think that benefits him as well is Kenneth Gainwell's out for this game. And, Rashad Penny's going to be playing. He didn't play in week 1. And DeAndre Swift is going to be that number 1 back. DeAndre Swift, just the ability to catch the ball at the backfield, I think just a more explosive player than Kenneth Gainwell. No shade on Kenneth Gainwell. Shout out to him. But I just think more explosive plays will be happening with DeAndre Swift out the backfield. And then also, too, DeAndre Swift being a little bit better of a pass catcher out the backfield, I think opens up for Jalen Hurts to be able to run the ball as well. We also take a look over here on Fantasy Pros. And Jalen Hurts, if you do play season-long fantasy, he's the number 1 ranked quarterback this week for week 2. He's projected 24.7 fantasy points, has an A-plus matchup here. Start sit is A-plus, 4-star matchup here versus Minnesota. And then also, the last thing with Jalen Hurts, we look at his fantasy point totals last season, right? 5 of his 7 highest fantasy score total games came at home. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 7 highest scoring fantasy score games for Jalen Hurts last year came at home. That's exactly the matchup he has here on Thursday Night Football versus the Vikings. So here are the 2 plays here, 2 overs. TJ Hockenson over 5 receptions. Jalen Hurts over 11.5 first half fantasy. Again, let me know in the comments below, you guys. If you don't like these plays, don't tail. Drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and as always, let's cash.